Welcome, Alex Bright from Audience. It's great to have you here. You guys have been on a bit of a journey over the past 12 months or so, which we're going to talk about. And you've had to adapt, I think, to the outside world and what's going on in the outside world. But before we get into that, do you want to say hi and tell our audience about you and what you do and who you do it for?
Sure thing. Thanks, Jan. Well, it's great to have this opportunity to talk, really. We felt like a little bit the last year was pretty mad, and we've been under the burrow trying to get everything done, so it's great to sort of pop our head up a bit. So I'm the MD of Audience, and we are an engagement agency. We very much started as event production, creative event production, so very physical form, and the last few years, we're 6.5 years old now, we've been moving further away and sort of having more strategic conversations. So the last year has been an acceleration to our grand plan, if you like, and a fun one, I think, looking back.
In retrospect. And what, when you say an engagement agency, what kind of things do you do? What's the output of your work?
So traditionally our output has been an event delivery of some form, but we have always liked to surround a physical experience with a number of different touch points around that. So we in traditional form, it's just having a good channel mix in your marketing strategy. But if we're focusing around a product, such as an activation or a conference, then it's what other instances can we engage in the audience that will enhance the ultimate delivery that we're doing in the end. And sometimes the delivery is a kickoff and it starts the process. So, if there is a physical event, that may be an instruction to go and continue doing something like experience, visit a retail store or take a flight somewhere. It may be in amongst a number of other things that could be, podcast series or amplification that we put out of home that encourage visitors to do something on the back of something else. So when I talk about engagement, I'm not thinking about how to make an impressive performance on the day. It's much bigger than that. It's how is that activation, that experience going to be memorable, around it.
And therein lies the point, right? So it sounds like that, a lot of the stuff that you do, it's very, it's people-centric, right? It's audience-centric. And you mentioned events in person, all that kind of stuff. And last year, a lot of stuff went on that I imagine made that kind of thing a bit trickier than normal.
Yeah, I think that's very fair to say. There's no denying the fact that, the ban on events damaged the business. Not damaged, it impacted and obviously had a hit on our performance financially. It was when I say acceleration, what I mean is that we are on a journey which is to bring our clients out of that mindset of I need to do this one thing to how can you approach this in a number of different ways that you can appeal to potentially a larger crowd, or at least engage with them on a number of different instances. So when you take the physical event away, had we been a production agency, and I do feel for our partners who are in this position, you are already in the conversation where the client may say, we've turned off this thing because it's now illegal, it's not possible, we have to turn off physical events, so thanks for your work in the past, we'll talk to you when we can do it again. Whereas we were in a position, based on our sort of engagement strategy for the much wider mix, that we could have a more elevated discussion around, well, how can you keep engaging with your audience? And that is where, we've been able to pivot. I know we're talking about that a lot more easily than I know other companies have done.
There we go. You said the P word sooner than I did, so I'm really...
I know.
Pivot. So it sounds like you need, the need to pivot came in. How did you get started on that journey? Because it sounds easy in retrospect. It probably sounds easy on paper. Pivot. We just change direction and go over here. How did you go down that road?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think looking back, we'll say it wasn't pivoting at all. It was in the plan all along, right? But it was a pivot because we hadn't promoted those other touch points very heavily, because the majority of our activation was a physical one. Majority of them, that was certainly what we were doing. And there was a focus which was a physical experience of some sort. So I guess the sort of the point we wanted to decide is whether we thought this was a long-term strategy plan for us, or if there's going to be a very temporary fix to something. And we were sort of toying with the idea for not long. It was weeks, sort of March last year was when all of obviously everyone's events got cancelled. And we had some pretty big shows planned for March that obviously couldn't go ahead. And it was okay, this is temporary. It immediately felt temporary. I think everyone would sort of say that it was going to be 3 months. There was a lull and we would get back to some normal at some stage. A number of weeks went by where we just thought this isn't going in the right direction at all. There's no sign of it being temporary. And so the conversations, by then we'd sort of moved through cancellation policies and, just strictly disabling that event or that activation and trying to pick it up later. At the back of those few weeks, we were then thinking about and talking with our clients about, well, what does it actually mean for your communication? Are you going to just turn this off until it all blows over? And not many people wanted to. There was a real appetite to keep things going. So we really wanted to be that partner and say, right, well, okay, let's carry on this conversation. What were we doing before? We were engaging an audience. Well, let's keep doing that. We can't do the physical thing, but what we were tapping into all along were those other channels. Now there's a big explosion of digital events. Everyone's seen them, they've been to them, and our argument was they were there all along. They're not new. These experiences, which are ultimately glorified Zoom calls, have been going on for ages, and it was just a choice. People didn't want to take the choice to do that. They didn't feel they were going to get all the things they do at a physical space in a virtual format. So I think that's when our pivoting changed from, okay, we just need to be doing this thing online, to no, how do we keep to our ethos? How do we stick to the values that we believed in? How do we make it impactful in a digital setting? And that's really when we're like, okay, we are gunning for this. We think it's a positive change and we want to make a huge impact in this space. Must have
felt a little bit like a gamble. I've got a vision in my head of Indiana Jones when he steps out onto that invisible bridge. You take that leap forward into the unknown because there's no concrete path ahead of you at that point.
It was. I don't know if it was a gamble. We sort of saw it as a bit of A/B testing, let's say. So slightly more thought out. We're going to have to give this a go before we write it off, and we just hadn't looked back since then. I think on a sort of a board level, we said that we would invest in this and we would try it, but we can only give it 6 months before we need to make a decision over just furloughing the company and just hoping it blows over. It was far less than that 6 months. Within the first couple of months, we realised there's a genuine product here, and that our existing products needed work by all means, but they could be adapted to the digital hemisphere. And we knew by then that, you said pivot is the P word, or I say hybrid is the H word, and it's a term overused, that we knew that actually, if we were clever about this, we could be moving into a digital space for the good. And we never thought of ourselves as a digital agency, and we won't. And, we're not a digital agency. I appreciate what our conversation is about, is pivoting into a digital position. Internally, we have this phrase IRL and URL, and it's sort of how those two impacts are going to be for the greater good in the end. And there will be events that will never return in a physical format. Some of our events that we've been running with our clients for years will never return in the physical domain, and it's for all the right reasons. There's genuine positive reasons beyond just budget allocation as to why that would be the case. So when you're looking at it like that, it makes complete sense that our values remain in place to deliver positive, engaging experiences in whatever format we decide they are. And we've done podcast series with our lockdown clients. We've done other video content series. We've had, live events that aren't live at all. They're all pre-recorded, and there's a whole mix of different experiences which we've been exploring with our clients that are pre-existing things. They nobody in the last year has invented a new form of engaging. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they're just readaptations for the new, potentially this new audience, right? The audience that used to go to a sales conference physically and now involving themselves in sort of more light touch podcast series and different formats of buying is taking place, but they're not new delivery tools. So I think pivoting is more about us choosing what method we're taking. Meanwhile, we're not forgetting what those real impacts were in a physical form. We as an agency can't wait to get back in the physical realm, of course not. And I know as everyday consumers, we are all as a population on Earth missing some of that physical interaction. But I won't pretend that there's digital advantages that we still need to consider.
Yeah, sure. And what about your clients? What was the reception like? Because from their perspective, we have this channel, we do these things, that can't happen, and you come to them and say, hey, the world's not over, we can do all this other stuff for you. How receptive were your clients to that shift?
It was an interesting journey, definitely. There's a range of different people we speak to within our business. They range from very specific physical event managers to top-line comms directors. So their remit is going to be different. And if you're speaking to a physical event delivery manager who, in some instances, have been up for redundancy themselves, are not going to be very receptive to the idea of creating a podcast series instead of doing a conference. That doesn't fit with their remit. It doesn't fit with what they've been tasked to do. So when you're speaking like that, it is difficult. Luckily, more of our conversations are on a slightly more sort of elevated level. So when you are speaking with the comms directors who you've traditionally been speaking to because they tasked you with an event plus PR plus campaigns out at home, whatever, then those conversations are a lot easier. And actually it's their appetite that really helped us feel confident that we're making the right decision and that we are, moving or escalating our offer much quicker in that direction. So it was a bit of a 50-50 depending on who you speak to. But now we're certainly seeing those event managers, the physical event managers, they've been rebriefed. They've been sort of retasked to have a much more digital appreciation, let's say. And when it came to that point, once they got told, okay, now we need to start thinking about doing something because our competitors have all started to catch up with us, then they're all ears. And in the summer of last year, we started a bit of a lockdown special of content, which was a few white papers, some videos, and making some exciting and encouraging effort to get our clients a bit more excited again. And I said that as invaluable. That absolutely kicked everyone in the right mood to keep going.
Yeah, and I'm interested to hear about practically or operationally how you make that shift. So a lot of my clients, a lot of people watching this, the digital agencies, right? So if we need to, we do PPC and SEO, we're very kind of service led, and if we pivot, we either pivot the services that we offer, or we look into a new market. So a lot of digital agencies move from, a broad mix of online marketing, digital marketing, to being really, really heavily e-commerce centric. So they're able to utilize the skills of the agency, but focus on online retail, right? For you, you run events, you've got physical assets. A lot of digital agencies, we have a few laptops and tables and a table tennis table, and that's it. Like physically, operationally for you guys, I might be wrong, but it feels like there's more of a shift to be done there too. Is that true? And how did that play out?
Well, to be brutally honest, there's two halves of our business. There's the brand experience half and the major events half. Brand experience was the one which was much easier to shift operationally, and everything else. The major events, which are predominantly government contracts, sort of placemaking about spaces, so landowners, that was, and still is, rather dialed down. We're having strategic conversations, we're having feasibility studies, we're being paid strategically to keep working there, which is great. But, warehouses are no longer needed. The teams that are involved in there are, we're doing more around sort of COVID testing, running COVID sites, that sort of stuff, a lot more logistical relevance. It's a completely different offer, it's a completely different conversation than the brand experience. So that is a part of our pivoting, I guess, is to dial down that and to slice it out. We'll physically move it into a different space brand wise, which means that we sort of cut off the portion of the company that could have dragged down the other portion. And operationally, that meant you're left with project managers with laptops, which you probably sounds familiar. And yes, we've got office spaces and so on that we hope to get back in again soon for some reason. There's, fleets and warehouses is all the sort of things we're having to readjust to. And as a sort of business going forward, we had already decided that was less of what our concern was. We wanted to be more of the sort of consulting than the builder position. And that's been the last 5 years of our plan anyway. So it wasn't too painful. And that's why I say I feel bad for our partners that have really felt this. And they're really feeling the pain because they, if you've got a conference stand builder and they're very, very good at that, how do they adapt? They've been adapting in their own way. They've gone into shop refits or to remodeling homes and other businesses, whatever. So, they're readjusting their tool set. But for us, it was a case of understanding and deciding what was the bit we wanted to invest in and what was the bit we didn't want to invest in, or didn't feel the need to, or didn't feel, or would have been a detriment to the other part of the business. There was no point flooding a sector which we knew was turned off with loads of investment that could have damaged the whole thing.
And you mentioned at the start, in hindsight, this is all part of the plan.
Always,
always. Looking back over the past 12 months, it is now. What have you learned? What have you taken from it?
That procrastination costs money, and it's bad for your health. That's a major point. Every business in the world has had this. They've been faced with new challenges, and it's not been any number of business advisors you have advising you to do something. They're all going to be relatively different in their advice. So sticking with your instinct decision and making it and cracking on with it would be the thing that I, if I had my time again in this last year, that I would probably make those decisions a bit quicker. It's easy to say that, right? Like you just said, hindsight's great, and obviously that was the right choice. We should have made that sooner. But we knew it, and we dragged our heels on something. So that costs money.
Yeah, and I think that's natural, isn't it? No matter how much of a plan or a strategy we put together for our business, it's only as good as the outside world allows it to be. So let's say you put a plan together last January. This is where we're going to be, at the end of the year. Come April, that plan's completely irrelevant because there's a load of stuff that you can't control. And then when things are changing so much around you, although in hindsight I think it looks like procrastination, when you're in it, you're just trying to get a sense of where this thing is going, right? It could go one of four ways, and we need to get 80% sure in our gut that this way is the right way.
Absolutely. And I think, we spent a lot of time on a management level addressing the numbers, going over them again, rechecking if those projections are actually true. Does it really look as bad as it is? Once you've spent weeks doing that, you've realised that you could have spent those weeks talking to new customers or your existing customers about what actually they want to have. So it was that was the procrastination part. I felt like, whereas at the time it felt very important that I understood if we're going to pay everybody in the right order, and that obviously all turned out great. So that hindsight's a wonderful thing, but I still feel like make a decision, make it quickly, act on it fast. And it's not unique to COVID. That's obviously I think Porter would have said that in his first sentence too. But
Yeah, make a decision. If it's wrong, make another one. If it's wrong, make another one.
Exactly.
If it's wrong,
Yeah,
make
yeah.
another one.
Just,
yeah.
yeah, and accept the bad decisions. You know, and get caught up on them.
Yeah, there was a really nice piece of actually a nice concise piece of research by McKinsey that I was talking about last year, and it used the metaphor of like a Formula One racing track, and those agencies, or those businesses rather, that come out of big world events like this are those that brake hard before the corner. You know, they slam on the brakes before the corner, they assess, they make a decision, and then they kind of power around the bend. But those that kind of keep going, you know, don't slam on the brakes early enough, end up in the in the wall. All right, we'll wrap up in a moment. A piece of advice. So if this is me, if I'm you, I'm running an agency this time last year, and I'm faced with this. I've got an awesome business. I've had a plan in place, and all the stuff outside that I can't control has just changed around me, and I need to do something differently. What's your top tip for me?
I think change your function and delivery method, but don't change the reason why you're doing it. And what I mean there is make sure that the reason you exist in the first place is still relevant after you pivot. I think I've seen a number of people completely reinvent themselves overnight, and they're like, oh, we no longer believe what we used to, we've got a new belief now. And I just think that's disingenuous. I think your clients sniff you out. I don't think it's just not very clever either.
Yeah, and means you have to look for a whole new. You're not just pivoting, but it's a new market. It's new conversations with new clients. Yeah,
exactly. And it's a bit like if you genuinely had a belief that this is a positive move and that the old thing you used to do was going to be neglected. You know, that's a bit of the gold rush mentality, isn't it? You know, you're chasing this new revenue, which you don't know for sure exists, and is probably already in the hands of another sector. You know, our move into digital means that we've got new competitors now, and you know, obviously, we're talking about digital agencies. We don't think we are a digital agency, but we know digital agencies can create digital experiences. Of course, they can, and it would be naive if we just dropped everything and said we're now a virtual events company. You know, that's not what we're saying at all. We're an engagement agency, and we've got some new function in order to achieve that.
Yeah, I love that. Alex, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for giving up your time to talk with us today. Yeah, some really powerful messages in there, and some top tips. I've made a couple of notes to remind me not to procrastinate anymore. Certainly going forward.
Alex,
thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Take care, and we'll see you soon.